It is another episode of, this was on national television, but I didn't want to say the word crap. I didn't think this word was crap, Chris. I think this was cheese.
Yeah. It was more curious than crap.
Right. And specifically what we're looking at is the All-Star Rock and Wrestling Saturday Spectacular, done on September 13th, 1985. And the reason that we picked a wrestling show was because that's how we met. So, Chris, if you could say, like, what do you have wrestling wise that you want to promote? Because I want to bring that out to everyone, please.
Yeah. So my claim to fame, so to speak, is I made a documentary about the Black women who integrated pro wrestling back in the 50s. It's called Lady Wrestler. You can watch it on Amazon. And we met because the main wrestler that I interviewed, Ethel Johnson, she was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in April of 2021.
Right.
And let's just say there was some controversy around it. So we did an interview about the controversy surrounding her induction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit of controversy in the case that they used the wrong picture.
Well, yeah, the wrong footage and the wrong picture, and didn't notify the family that they were being. She was being inducted.
You did a great job, sort of like articulating that, and they can find that on your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Which is.
Chris, actually, it's funny you say that because YouTube just actually gave me my own little hyperlink. It used to just be YouTube and a whole bunch of characters. Now it's youtube.com/C/Chris Bournea. Mm-hmm. And Bournea spelled Bournea.
Yeah. So check that out. It's certainly worth your time, especially if you want to listen to or learn about the history of pro wrestling from the 50s from a non-POC or POC point of view.
Yeah.
And hey, I'm going to promote myself. I wrote a book.
Yes, you did. A very good book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Which is on Chavo Guerrero Sr., instant classic, also on Amazon. He's since left us, and I helped him with that. And we were talking about this back and forth. Like, eventually we have to do a wrestling cross show for this, right?
We do, absolutely.
Yeah. And Roddy Piper was Chavo Sr.'s good friend at one point, and he hosted, I put this in air quotes, the All-Star Rock and Roll Saturday Spectacular, airing on September 13th, 1985.
Yes.
This, I think, will be the first time we ever did something where we're not both, well, okay, I'm speaking for myself. I didn't hate this. I had some fun watching this.
Yeah, it was cheesy, and it sort of was like aware it was cheesy. It wasn't trying to be anything but.
Mm-hmm. So what this was, back in the 80s and early 90s, when cartoons mattered, in terms of the, well, I shouldn't say this. When cartoons mattered in terms of Saturday morning.
Yes.
They would promote that, and this is all this was. It was a promotional show to get young people watching the Saturday morning lineup.
Now that's what I couldn't figure out. Did this air on Saturday morning or in prime time?
Prime time.
Okay, that's a little counterintuitive. You're trying to get kids to tune in on Saturday morning, but it airs in prime time.
But it's on Friday night, so it's Friday night at 8:00.
Okay, that makes sense. So they're promoting the tomorrow morning's lineup, basically.
Right.
Okay.
And I think they did this sort of idea from like the 80s to the early 90s until, for whatever reason, like again, so like Chris and I, we're around the same age. We're both about to hit 50, which is depressing. Well, depressing for me. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I just try to see it as, the cliche, it's better than the alternative.
That's why I told my dad. Yeah. And that was what they did then, because like Saturday morning television, when you and I were young, was a big deal. Like the three big networks really promoted the hell out of it.
Yeah. Well, they didn't really have to promote it. It was just sort of a built-in part of our childhoods. You got up on Saturday morning, ate your bowl of tricks or whatever, and watched the
Right.
Super Friends or whatever was on.
Okay. So, since we're here, so
Yeah.
Chris, what was your show like when you were a kid?
Super Friends, and then just odd little assorted things like Richie Rich, which for some reason wasn't on every week. It was only on like every now and then. And then I don't know if you remember, Laverne and Shirley had a cartoon about being in the army.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was on really briefly. That was sort of like that early 80s wave of popularity of like, movies like Stripes, kind of promoting the army.
I remember like Happy Days in Outer Space or something.
Oh wow, I never
I might
saw
be
that
wrong
one.
on that, but well, Josie and the Pussycats went out. I know they did a weird Happy Days sort of thing, but we have technically a double strike because this is produced by the Crofts,
Yes.
and we looked at that when we talked. Was that our first episode? Pink Lady.
I
and
think
Jeff?
it was Pink Lady
Yeah.
and Jeff. I think it
Yeah.
was our first episode. Yep.
Yeah. And this wasn't that bad, but it opens up with a guy named Scott Osborne. I tried to Google him, I couldn't figure him out. And he's telling us that a television first has just occurred where somebody has took over a show, which is kind of weird because considering that 10 seconds before that CBS special thing sort of spun and said, this was recorded from a previous date.
Yeah. Because I guess people were expecting sort of like primetime specials to be live back then.
But I guess they had to acknowledge that. Like, is your country, because I'm Canadian or American, so litigious that they were that worried that they had to say that?
I don't think so. I think it's just more of like a common practice. Like if you see a talk show now, like a daytime talk show, they'll have a little like banner across the bottom of the screen that says previously recorded. So I don't know if it's an FCC obligation or if it's more just like just kind of like giving your audience a heads up because they're like, okay, this episode is airing on, June 5th, but there's a Christmas tree in the background. Why, why is that?
Or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So it starts off with a bunch of people in a background and they are chanting Hervé. Hervé as in Hervé Villachez.
Yeah.
Hervé in 1985 was lucky to do anything. I hate to say this, but that's how it was. He was 3 years removed from being fired from Fantasy Island.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that long. Wow.
3 or 2. I mean, I either way, in 80s years, a lot.
Yeah.
So, but even in a heyday of Hervé, there was not going to be a bunch of people chanting for Hervé.
I don't know. They would have been chanting tattoo. They probably wouldn't have been chanting Hervé.
Yes. Yeah. You're 1,000% right. Yeah. So anyway, he the I don't even know what to call him. A guy named Scott Osborne. He says, "Well, this is television history. Somebody's taken over a TV show." Turns out it's Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Right.
When did you start watching wrestling?
When I was around, I want to say 10 or 11, back when
around this time.
Yeah. Well, no, it was a little before. So it was more like early 80s. This was mid 80s.
Yeah. So who was your guy when you started watching wrestling?
Yeah, Rowdy Roddy Piper. So
Piper?
So it was really kind of surreal that I got to interview him for Lady Wrestler. I interviewed him at a fan convention in Indianapolis.
What did he talk about for this?
Well, so he was really approachable. So he didn't know, I didn't know him. I didn't know how to get in contact with him, but I was just surfing the web and saw he was going to be at this fan convention called Days of the Dead, and he was there not for wrestling. He was there for They Live, the sci-fi movie he did. So this was a horror sci-fi convention.
Okay, yeah.
So I just got in his line. He was the big room at a hotel where they had different autograph tables, and I just went up to him and I said, "Hey, I'm making this documentary about Black women in wrestling. Did you know?" And I mentioned some of the women, Ramona Isbell, Ethel Johnson. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember those women. I'd be happy to talk to you about it." So I'll give you the short version of the story. He's like, "Come back tomorrow when the line will be shorter, and I'll tell you everything I know." So I had told a friend back home in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio, that I would come to his concert. So I had to drive all the way back from Indianapolis to Columbus, which is like a 4-hour drive. Then drive all the way back. No, I wasn't living in it. I've never lived in Indianapolis. I've always lived in Columbus, but I just happened to see online.
So in Indy. Sorry.
Yeah. So I happened to see online that this fan convention in Indianapolis was going on, was within driving distance. So I had to drive all the way back home, then drive all the way back to the convention center the next day, or hotel, whatever it was. And it took him hours and hours to come down. And his publicist told me, he was like, "Just between you and me," and I can say this now because he, passed away. He's sleeping off a hangover. But once he finally came back into the room, he was just so accessible and gave me tons of quotes that I used in the documentary, and was really a lot more. His attitude was a lot more. I wouldn't say feminist, but pro women wrestler than you would expect, considering his image. He was just like, yeah, these women, were really talented and they were just seen as flash, which is not fair. Women should be able to be headliners. And yeah, that seemed like that was at least the way he presented it himself, the real Roddy rather than the persona.
Which is kind of interesting because we're going to sort of like deal with a bit of that as we sort of go forward. I loved Roddy in this.
I did too. Yeah.
So we have the opening credits starring Roddy Piper, and then the second credit was Gary Owens.
Yeah.
Which, one of the great voices of our time. You may not think, like, who the hell is Gary Owens? Well, he did Laugh-In, and he also was the main voice for Saturday Night Live forever.
Yeah. He was sort of like Don Pardo, or one of those distinctive voices.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really interesting, sort of like seeing Gary as part of that. Or wait, Don Pardo? Am I confusing Don Pardo with Gary Owens? Don Pardo did Saturday Night Live.
Oh, I just thought you knew what you,
no, I don't know
were talking about. I know maybe both of them did, but I just remember hearing Don Pardo's voice and name.
Yeah, I might
on
be
Saturday
wrong.
Night Live.
Yeah, I might have confused them both. So my apologies. So we have going ahead, Patti LaBelle, Pee Wee Herman, New Edition, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Captain Lou Albano, Hulk Hogan. I can't wait to get into some of these. Some more than others. Roddy's introduced, flanked by the Piperettes. And then I wrote a note here, booed by the audience or not, because this was clearly where they're piping in some stuff. Some good,
pun intended. Yeah.
Right. And Rodney does this bit of a speech. He says they wanted Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Springsteen, and that he was the right choice. And they needed someone who could talk about Pee Wee Herman, make fun of Patti LaBelle's hair, and says, this is the thing that I said to you, that I thought was a little racist, that New Edition was mowing his lawn.
Yeah. Well, I think they were more going for these are kids and they're doing errands that kids would be doing.
Could be.
But yeah, it was definitely tone deaf for sure.
It was not great. Then he trashes Cyndi Lauper, and then he sits in his giant chair. Owens is playing Ed McMahon, and then our first guest is Kareem was still playing in the NBA. Did you feel that he was the most wooden person on this show?
Yeah, it was pretty obvious that he was just doing a scripted bit, because it's like how because he pretends not to know who Roddy Piper is, and it's like, okay, did you just wander into a television studio? It's like, yeah, it fell flat, definitely.
Kareem, and I'll give him massive props. There's a lot of great athletes now. I'll look at LeBron James, who has some charisma. I mean, you can say what you want, good or bad, about LeBron. LeBron has a personality where he can act. Kareem was an airplane. Kareem can't act. He cannot, but he still worked an airplane because they knew what to do with him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when I look at this, do you remember Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Different Strokes?
No, I don't.
So he played one of Arnold's teachers.
Really?
Yeah. And again, same kind of delivery. He just can't do it. Which maybe then, I don't know whether we cared or didn't, but it was the same sort of thing where Kareem is just sort of like there delivering some lame lines. Good on him for even getting this role, because if I'm looking at 1985, there's not a lot of athletes who are getting this type of role.
Mm-hmm.
Where they could sort of say, like, hey, I can move on from this. I can move on from being an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Kareem had that opportunity. He stunk. Absolutely stunk, but it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, man. I love the guy.
Yeah.
I can't hate him. Like,
yeah. And he's gone on to be a pretty good writer. I know he's written a couple books, and I think he writes columns for Time. So acting is not his strong suit, but writing, you wouldn't necessarily think athlete, born writer, but yeah, he's more somebody who should express himself on the page and not the camera.
Which is also why he's like a major force in social justice in terms of athletes.
Mm-hmm.
This is not reflective here. So the banter between Kareem and Piper is a little lame, but I wrote down that Piper is awesome because he knows his role. I am the bad guy, but I know when to take the L.
Mm-hmm.
So like after they're having their little banter, Kareem leaves and Piper says, well, I would beat him 1-on-1. And the next thing you know, there's a basketball thrown from Kareem to Piper's head. And Piper just goes, he just does that look.
Yeah. I thought it was cool that Piper didn't take himself all that seriously.
This is Piper the wrestler. I mean, like, and he is the MVP here. Like, just I can't believe that the 13-year-old Kirk did not see this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Like, because I would have loved everything that he did. What we got here? Piper's got two fans that are clearly nerds, which is actually perfect for what it was in pro wrestling. The two fans of Roddy Piper, they were nerds, they were losers. If you were into pro wrestling in 1985, you're not supposed to be with those guys.
Right.
So, and Piper plays it perfectly. I should go back here back to Kareem. So Kareem's presenting the Berenstain Bears. Do you remember that?
The cartoon?
Yeah, the cartoon. I don't remember any of that.
I didn't realize it was a cartoon that long ago. I thought it was more recent.
Yeah.
Because I think they're on PBS now, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, maybe. My favorite line to hear from Kareem is like, I'm here to present the Berenstain Bears. Here's a clip. It's not quite like that, but
yeah.
But it's lame stuff. Like, I don't remember this as a kid.
The Berenstain Bears?
Not at all.
Yeah, I don't either. I thought it was more recent that they made a cartoon of that.
They probably did. They probably did, yeah. But yeah, for that particular time, at that, I didn't think it was even that impressive. So as we go here, dun, 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 dun. All right, so Cream leaves, pipe. Hulk Hogan's on tape. And it's sort of interesting too, where they say, well, Gary Owens says, well, I've got Hulk Hogan, he's in Boston. And all of a sudden there's a tape of him in Boston. I don't know how that works, but yeah, whatever. Hulk does his typical promo, and Piper gets pissed off, whatever. And then they do a clip of Hulk Hogan's rock and wrestling. I remember this as a kid. Do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. Because in 1985, I was all in on anything WWE.
Okay.
So I got so excited. I watched the first episode. I would have been 13. It was like, this stunk. Do you know who Hulk Hogan's voice was for the cartoon?
No.
Brad Garrett. From
Wow.
Everybody Loves Mary.
Wow.
Yeah. Another famous one is James Avery as the Junkyard Dog. Uncle.
Oh, wow.
Uncle Phil.
Wow.
So I thought that was sort of interesting. Also super interesting that in the 1985, the WWF, who was so bad in race relations, realized, hey, let's just have a black actor sort of like do a black character, which so many shows 30 years later did not figure out to do.
Yeah.
So you never saw Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay. No, you missed nothing. It was terrible. And then we have New Edition. This, I really want to do a deep dive here. I honestly misremembered that New Edition was this big in 1985.
They were just starting to blow up in 1985 because Cool It, that's when Cool It Now came out.
Yeah.
And I think the song they performed in the show was My Secret.
Yeah.
Not Cool It Now. So they were just starting to take off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but still, they were already big for about 2 years. So
not from my recollection.
Not from mine.
They didn't. Their career didn't take off in 1983. Not at least not on R&B radio in the United States.
I'm just going by Wikipedia.
Well, I'm just going by my memory of R&B radio growing up listening to it. New Edition did not take off until They may have been formed in 1983, but they didn't blow up until 1985.
Well, I guess it's sort of the difference too, because like from in Columbus and then Toronto, did Columbus have a lot of urban, like, I hate saying that word urban, but
yeah, we had 2 or 3. There was one called WVKO, which was like the original black radio station that like went off at sundown for some reason. And then there was like one called Z103, and that was like the more modern one that played New Edition and played like a lot of
Jasper the Friendly Corgi has something to say about that. Hey, idiot. That's my dog.
New Edition historian, huh?
Yeah, Jasper _ the Friendly Corgi. You can follow him on Instagram.
I'll have to do that.
Yeah.
But so we had a couple of urban stations that played R&B and hip hop and yeah.
So before we went online for this, I sent you a message and I said, does Bobby Brown look more uninterested than anything else?
Yeah. I just thought New Edition in general was an odd fit. I mean, whose music would Rowdy Piper be less likely to listen to?
None.
I mean, first of all, a teeny bopper group, but then a bunch of black kids. It just did not work.
Well, the other thing too that I was thinking about when they did this is the only group or the only time where they actually painted the crowd.
Okay.
So there were people who were clearly, well, I don't want to say clearly, unless they were piping that in, I don't know, that seemed to really care about New Edition.
Yeah.
New Edition at this point was pretty damn big. It's past Candy
Yeah.
Girl. It's past Cool It Now. And I was doing my research. It was 3 months though before they kicked out Bobby Brown.
Okay. Well, I think he left. According to him, he wanted to go solo.
No, I don't know what's right. I listened to an interview with Ricky Bell before,
Okay.
and according to him, they all kicked him out.
Okay.
So
He was invited not to return.
more or less,
Yeah.
more or less. And new additions, and like you said, it's an interesting sort of thing to have for this. Watching them banter with Piper is the only word I can come up with is surreal. It doesn't make it. It's so weird to watch this. Like I
Yeah.
don't know that Roddy knew who they were, and Roddy wasn't old. He would have been 32 here,
Mm-hmm.
but he's in his own wrestling world.
Mm-hmm.
New Edition would have been their late teens. It was a strange dynamic,
Yeah.
but when they're all sort of like just sitting there, there's Bobby Brown. Like I couldn't stop watching Bobby Brown. He just did not want to be there.
And soon he wasn't.
And soon he wasn't, yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, when I look back at like from my childhood memories, if you would have told me that Ralph Tresvant was not going to be the biggest performer of that,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
Lead singer.
"You're wrong."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had a brief little solo career, but not to the level of Bobby Brown, definitely.
Well, he did, but
Or even Johnny Gill.
yeah, exactly, yeah, because it's interesting too, because like, we're not really that interesting. That high-pitched voice works when you're a teen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to translate in your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did not think we'd ever, when we decided, hey, we're going to do a show, we're going to talk about New Edition, but here we are.
Yeah, but I do have to give the show an A for effort in promoting diversity, because they could have just chosen whatever, quote unquote mainstream teeny bopper act that was popular at the time.
So let's go there. So this was produced by Cyndi Lauper and Dave Wolf. Dave Wolf was the husband at the time of Cyndi Lauper. So
seen in the Time After Time video, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this was their vision. Cyndi, who we'll see later. Cyndi is someone who, how do I put this? For people our age and people younger, like if you were to say like, well, Madonna's like way bigger than Cyndi Lauper. Yeah, but at one point in time, it was neck and neck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in fact, some people were saying Madonna is going to be a flash in the pan and Cyndi Lauper is like the real talent who's going to last.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jasper agrees, my dog. I think though with Cyndi was super true to who she was. And I love Cyndi Lauper. I think she's awesome. I absolutely love her. But she was not going to eclipse Madonna, because Madonna knew to be a chameleon. Cyndi was going to be Cyndi, and which is fantastic. The amazing thing is she's like probably 7 years older than Madonna. You'd never know it when you look at
No. In fact, she seems more youthful and playful, at least when she first came out, than Madonna.
Well, Cyndi Lauper was in her mid-30s when she finally hit it big.
Wow.
So like Captain Lou Albano was her father-in-law.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's how that whole rock and wrestling thing sort of happened.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I personally, I'm going to sort of like go back on for my Not in Hall of Fame site. Cyndi Lauper, to me, should be in the WWE Hall of Fame.
She did a lot to promote it. She really did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because Cindy in 1985, 1986 was in the top 10, maybe higher, in terms of musical stars.
Mhm.
So for you youngins listening here, she was the Olivia Rodrigo at that point,
Mhm.
when she
Mhm.
was twice as old. Uh, just weird. Which is so weird. Who is that calling me? Oh, she can wait. All right. Anyway, so we've got, as we're continuing, we have got some weird sketch. I really don't know how to describe it. Ah, come on. We've got a sketch that Piper is apparently sort of like doing this Shakespeare thing. Captain Lou Albano shows up. This I don't even know what to describe this. Do you?
No,
All right, so let's not.
it's just yeah.
But Captain Lou's there. Pee Wee Herman finally shows up as the king. Pee Wee Herman. I don't know how to describe him for people much younger than me.
Yeah, so he was a grown man taking on the persona of a child,
Mhm.
and it was hard to figure out if he was doing like trying to do children's entertainment. His TV show Pee Wee's Playhouse was definitely geared toward children, but like his movies, which were directed by Tim Burton, were a little more edgy and were definitely like more adult than the TV show.
Mhm.
So he was just sort of like, I think he started as like trying to do like 50s kitsch, and then sort of got pigeonholed as like a like children's entertainer, which I don't think he originally meant for his act to be just geared toward children.
I think he's one of those many comedians who come up with a character, come up, do it, it works, and then they're stuck in it. So like him, Andrew Dice Clay,
Yeah,
Larry the Cable Guy,
yeah.
and they don't know what to do after they get there. And I'm trying to think of like if I had, or if I was around like a 17, 18-year-old trying to say like, well, this guy, Pee Wee Herman was popular. And they would look at that and say like, it makes no sense. I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I just think it was, first of all, in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of 50s nostalgia. So the way he dressed was sort of like, he was sort of like a walking like toy from the 50s,
Mhm.
or sort of like Howdy Doody, that kind of like 50s children's TV host. So
Mhm.
it was that sort of the nostalgia factor. And then the fact that he was like a grown man doing all these childish things, like saying, I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah. Did you get?
Sort of like Ernest, like the character Ernest.
Oh God. Oh man, we're never going to talk about that ever.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. At this point, Pee Wee, did you get the feeling that he was at this point the biggest star of this whole thing based on the reaction?
Yeah, because Pee Wee's Big Adventure had come out that year, the
Yeah.
movie.
A month from there. So like
Mhm.
it's Jesus Christ. All right, so we've got a couple more clips here. Muppet Babies and Muppet Monsters. I remember Muppet Babies. I didn't remember Muppet Monsters, so I had to look that up.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah, so Muppet Monsters was just another attempt to sort of like add to the Muppet thing. Muppet Babies was a massive hit as a cartoon. Muppet Monsters was not.
Mhm.
And then they do clips of returning shows. Dungeons and Dragons, I remember. Land of the Lost, I thought it was a 70s thing.
That's what I thought too.
It probably
Maybe they
was.
rebooted it.
Yeah.
They probably were like rebooting it.
Did you get that green screen feeling?
Yes, totally. Yep. It was probably blue screen back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. So then
Yeah.
there was a bit of Snoopy there. And they say, well, Patti LaBelle's next. I love Patti LaBelle.
I do too.
I absolutely love her. So she was, I feel bad because at that time I thought, man, she's so old.
She was only like 40 maybe at the most, right?
Right, but
if you
you and I would have been 13, 14, right? So she was a lot older looking, and now she doesn't look that old.
Yeah, it's because she wasn't, when you say old looking, it's like she wasn't haggard, but she just was very mature. And she'd been around like
Yeah.
since well, she'd actually been around I want to say since the late 50s with her first girl group, Patty and the Bluebells. But she became famous with LaBelle, the sort of Afro rock group
Mhm.
in the 70s. But so the 80s, much like Tina Turner, this was her like renaissance. And so she was having like a kind of a pop comeback with
Right.
the song she did, I think, was New Attitude from Beverly Hills Cop.
No, Stirred Up.
Stirred Up. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew there were two songs
Yeah.
from Beverly Hills Cop. So
And she was awesome. Like that was like as a kid, that was the first time I ever sort of knew who she was. And Piper's making fun of her hair. And I remember thinking as a kid, well, I've never seen anyone sort of like do that whole fan thing.
yeah,
Because
that was the cool thing about her.
Well, I didn't know her past. So I remember like 11, 12 when she became, I won't say became, but she had her hits, her 80s hits. I didn't know who she was. So I had no idea about her past. And like now, like right now, I think she's an absolute goddess and legend.
Yeah, yeah. And the
Yeah.
cool thing about her is she's not just a singer, she's an entertainer. Like, she was giving as good as she got with Piper. She was like saying, I'm gonna break your face, which is something my grandmother used to say all the time. So she was not, stiff at all like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. She was charismatic and
Patty's
totally
my
in on the joke.
MVP other than Piper.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So she does her song, and then again, the most surreal thing for you and I as 80s kids, you've got Patti LaBelle dancing, and then Kareem shows up with Pee Wee doing his and then Piper doing his cocaine infused whatever the hell it was. And I'm not speaking out of turn. Piper was doing a lot of coke then, because he said so, and my friend Chapo said so too. But anyway, so moving on, like my favorite part here is when Piper's interviewing Patti LaBelle, and it's just this one part where she puts her hand over his mouth. Piper does one of those great facials. And then Patti LaBelle almost corpses, like she's trying to stay in character, knowing that Roddy is
mugging. Yeah.
Right. And she's awesome. I love Patti LaBelle. I just absolutely love her.
She's so charismatic. She really is.
Oh my God. There's some clip, I don't know what it is, in some kind of daytime show, it might be with Rachel Ray, where somebody's trying to do some cooking and they're, how do I put this? Patty's sort of like just trying to interject because she's part of that program, and Patty's just looking at the audience like, what's this white woman trying to do to me?
If it's the clip I'm thinking about, she was on Martha Stewart one time.
Okay,
when Martha Stewart had a syndicated show. And Martha Stewart is, apparently Snoop Dogg is the only one who knows how to get through to her. But she's such an ice queen. And with someone like Patti LaBelle, it just does not work because Patti LaBelle is so warm and so bubbly. And I remember Patti LaBelle was like trying to draw Martha Stewart out of herself, and it just was not working at all. I mean, she was giving Kareem Abdul-Jabbar a run for his money.
You saw that too, right? It's like I felt the same thing. It's like Patty was thinking like, yeah, I think I can get Kareem after this. I think we get some of this skyhook.
Yeah.
Which they very well might. But yeah, Patty is goddess.
She truly
goddess
is.
Then, goddess now, goddess when she's dead.
Yeah.
Where do we leave off here? So she presents Captain Kangaroo's story break. I don't remember this.
I don't either.
Yeah. All right, anyway, so Piper says that he invited Cyndi Lauper. She refused and then brings out a Cyndi Lauper lookalike. Whatever. Okay, so some fat version who does
and much older too.
Yeah. I looked it up. She's not that much older.
Oh, the lady who did
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. Well, Cyndi Lauper was in her mid-30s then.
Okay.
Like Cindy is,
She's 70 now.
yeah. So Cindy looks fantastic. Cindy
Yeah.
is, I don't know who I think is a bigger goddess right now, a Patti LaBelle or Cyndi Lauper.
Well, I'd have to say hands down Patti LaBelle, but
Okay. I think they're both awesome. I mean,
Mhm.
I love them both. Did you ever see the Cyndi Lauper movie Vibes?
No, that just Jeff Goldblum is in it, right?
Right. Yeah. It
Yeah,
is. Yeah, it's shit.
I used to see it in the video store back when they had video stores. I'd see the cover of it, and even just the cover of it looked bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, it was absolutely bad. Uh, but then Cindy comes out. She just says, like, oh my God. Oh, I forgot to mention, Hervé Villechaize has been trying to get on back on the show this whole time.
Probably mirroring real life.
Mm. Well, there was one clip too where he says, like, I'm trying to get back on my show. Oh, the plane. Oh, wrong show. It's like,
Side note, did you ever see My Dinner with Hervé?
yes.
Yeah, that was great. I had no idea he had gone through all that stuff after he left Fantasy Island.
I did. It's fantastic. Peter Dinklage might be the only little person who can sort of like play the leading man on anything, and I don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Peter Dinklage with Lizzo, I'll buy it.
Well, there was that controversy that people were saying it was yellow face casting because people assumed Hervé Villechaize was Asian, like Filipino, but he was French.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Peter Dinklage had to come out and say, no, he was European, he was French because of his dwarfism. You know, he had this look about him that people assume is, Asian, but that's not the case at all.
Are we going a little bit too SJW when you figure you're not casting the right person to?
Well, I just think you should have your facts straight before you start protesting something. You should know what you're actually protesting about.
I know I missed that completely. I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Well, I only came across it because after I watched the movie, I kind of looked up reviews, and that was like one of the links was like Peter Dinklage addresses the casting controversy.
Wow.
But you know what? As a kid, I thought Hervé Villechaize, I didn't think Asian per se, but I didn't think he was French European. I mean, obviously his name is French, but I thought he was, Tahitian or something. I had no idea that he was European.
Don't ever remember thinking about it. Now that I sort of like think about that, I just remember thinking, I like this guy. All right, so, since we're here, I'm going to segue out. Do you know who one of my favorite actors was as a kid? Actually, Chris, can I ask, how tall are you?
6'1.5". I hesitated to say 6'2" because sometimes I give myself the extra half, but
yeah. Well, I'm 5'8".
Okay.
Yeah, and I say this because we've never met, so like I'm short.
Well, you're about average height for a man. I think average height is 5'9".
Bless you. Probably not. But when I was a kid, my favorite actor was Paul Williams.
Okay.
Who showed up on Fantasy Island a few times. So he's only like 5'1". Follows me on Twitter, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So like he's like singer songwriter, like just this.
Okay, I remember him from the Blonde, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a documentary about him.
Yeah, like Still Alive or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I thought, okay, this was my favorite guy because I thought I'm gonna be like 5 foot nothing because I was the shortest kid in school. So when I got to 5'8", like I was so happy because I never thought that was going to happen. But yeah, wow. Paul Williams was my guy because he was always in these 70s things where he's always getting the women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That happened a lot apparently in the 70s. Men that you would never think of as sex symbols were like Gabe Kaplan on the Love Boat pilot.
Which you can watch on our previous episode.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't like kind of happen now still.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, look at cartoons.
Like Flint, you're talking about like Flintstones or,
Okay, what are the things that happen after the Flintstones? Family Guy,
oh yeah. Well, that's a trope. I mean, King of Queens and
right?
well, yeah, that's definitely a trope.
The trope works though, because my wife
Mhm.
thinks that Kevin James is hot.
Really? Okay.
It worked out well for me. I'll leave it at that. If you actually look at who Kevin James's wife is, it's another Asian woman, which is what I landed. But anyway,
Interesting.
yeah. Moving on. Cindy comes out with Hervé. She says they're recording the real show, and it's next door. And then Piper sort of like plays the lovable. I don't want to say lovable loser because it's not quite right. It's just like I'm taking the L, but like I didn't really lose. He refuses to admit that he lost, which is what a pro wrestling heel does.
Yeah.
So he's got his two fans at the end that just say, "Well, we thought you were awesome." And then right the thing is, it says it's a promotion or production from Cyndi Lauper, David Wolf. This might be the first thing that we've ever covered that I didn't have to watch in multiple settings. I tried to think of if I saw this as a 12-year-old, how much I would love this, and I would have.
I would have too.
Yeah, it was cheesy. It was awesome. I had fun.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
You have to pick the next one, man, because I'm always picking this.
Okay. There's a couple candidates. Yeah.
All right. So final thoughts on. Usually we always say like, who's to blame? I don't want to say this time. Or so okay. Let me do that. Let me do this inside. Who was the worst performer?
I would have to say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was just wouldn't. Yeah, for sure.
I have to agree with that. All right, I guess with that, this show is closed. If you haven't seen some of the other shows on this network, please. God, I have a network. I'm gonna say I have a network. Why not?
Yeah, you have a channel.
I have a channel. I got something.
Yeah.
I got something. Last night on How the Hell Did This Go to #1, we looked at Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You.
I like that the first 7,000 times I heard it.
That's kind of where we went with that.
Yeah.
It was like a great song, just we're tired of it.
Yeah.
The weekly show I do with Evan Nolan, where we look at Hall of Fame stuff. Oh my God, there's so much other stuff. But hey, stay safe, everybody. Have a great holiday or whatever you believe in. Doesn't matter to us.
Happy holidays. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Listening,
watching, all works.
tuning in.
All right. Bye, everyone.